Hi, I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash, the host of Health Matters with UI Media Network. I have a very, very exciting guest today. He was among the very best of elite fighter pilots and fighter pilot instructors in this country. At the peak of his career, he was devastated by the news that he had developed a rare form of cancer and was given a 15% survival chance. We're going to talk about him and his story today. His name is Joel Neeb. Joel, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for joining us on Health Matters.
Nelson, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
You're very, very welcome. I asked my daughter, who's a world champion lifter, what question she would ask you as the best of fighter pilots in this country. And she said, Dad, what I'd want to know is, was there ever an epiphany when he was a child or a young man where he had that moment of realization that this is who I want to become?
In terms of becoming a pilot, you know, the story is a little less climactic than you'd hope it'd be. So I went to the Air Force Academy. It was a great school.
Right.
I went there because I wanted to serve, and I really connected with their mission. But I didn't necessarily know that I wanted to be a pilot at that time. And, you know, I love Top Gun, and
right.
You know, like every kid growing up said you want to be a fireman or a fighter pilot.
Sure.
Or those things. But it wasn't like this intense calling. And I certainly went to school with a lot of kids who it was an intense calling for whom this is what they dreamed of their entire lives. But for me, it wasn't until I actually got out of college, graduated from the Air Force Academy, got up into an airplane, and then I was bitten by the bug and really enjoyed it and had a passion for the flying aspect of it.
Excellent. Joel, who do you have to become one of the very, very, very best fighter pilot and fighter pilot instructors in the world?
So becoming an elite in anything, I think, has some common paths. And one of the key things that I had to learn to do was to get outside of my comfort zone. And so when you're a fighter pilot, that means when I'm 22 years old, I have to be able to go take an airplane up, go hundreds of miles an hour, go upside down in that airplane, and do that by myself.
Right.
With you know, about this much glass between me and a 3-mile fall. And to be perfectly honest, I was terrified. You know, it was not something I was super excited to go do when it was my time to do it. And the other part was I didn't feel ready. And so I had to learn to trust the system. I had to learn to trust my instructors at the time that I was ready. And sure enough, they'd put their faith and their training into me, and I did fine. But that was a pretty big hurdle for me to get over psychologically and trust in that system and then rise to the occasion and go make that happen.
Wow. What was it like the first time you ever broke the sound barrier? I'm often asked that. Like, I wish I could ask a fighter pilot, what is it like to break the sound barrier?
When you break the sound barrier, first of all, it looks incredibly cool from the outside. So if you ever see this, and it doesn't happen down low very often because we got to be real careful breaking the sound barrier.
Absolutely.
We'll get a call back if we accidentally break the sound barrier, and they'll say, hey, you blew out this car window, or you know, this cow died. A farmer will call.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, it's a big deal. And so we got to be real careful about inadvertently going faster than the speed of sound. But if you're watching this take place, and it's amazing, there's this cloud shockwave that forms on the wings of your aircraft, and it's just this beautiful natural phenomenon that takes place when it occurs. But inside the plane, nothing occurs. I mean,
so there's no difference.
Not a thing. Literally, you'd never know. And it just goes to show we really stand on the shoulders of giants in our profession, because when Chuck Yeager did it, he was putting his plane to the utmost test.
Right. And
the entire thing was shaking, and it looked like it was going to fall apart. When I did it, you know, literally not a blip on my radar. I didn't even notice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So how long were you a fighter pilot before you became an actual instructor?
So I was a pilot for 14 years total in the Air Force. I was an instructor right off the bat. So I graduated pilot training, and I was not a fighter pilot instructor. I was brought back to train in the exact same course that I had just completed. So I spent 3 years training new pilots in just flying aircraft and being proficient at flying hundreds of miles an hour, a couple feet away from another plane. And then after that,
I'm sorry, give me just a second to be with that. Say that one more time. Flying at hundreds of miles per hour and being within a few feet of another plane.
A few feet of another plane, and not just one. We would typically fly with 4 planes at a time. And when we do that, we'd go up to 90 degrees of bank, and it looks like that other plane's going to fall down on top of you, but you're 3 feet away, and we would train these students by themselves to keep that plane right there, welded on that wing, basically.
Wow. I can't imagine that. Was that terrifying the first few times you did it?
Absolutely terrifying the first few times we did it, but exhilarating at the same time. And that's really where I found my passions in life, a combination of terror and exhilaration.
Right.
that I've pursued.
Incredible. So you have to have a very, very special personality. You have to be a really special person to be able to handle that kind of stress.
You know, I don't know if you have to necessarily be a special person to do that. I really believe everybody can do it, but I don't think people push themselves outside of their comfort zone enough
Right.
to truly get beyond the fear into the exhilaration
Yes.
and the appreciation for what they're trying to do.
It's so funny you say that. I was speaking to a woman this last weekend in LA who was a fighter pilot, and she said the same thing. She said, no, I think anybody could be trained. And I said,
Oh,
"Come on,
yeah.
are you kidding me? I can't imagine flying, 3 feet or 4 feet with my wing to another person's wing at 400 or 500 knots, I guess it is,
Yeah.
per hour. That's incredible. So you get to the peak of your career, and something devastating happens. What happened?
Yeah, so in 2010, I am 11 years into my career. Everything's going great. I'm actually being considered to become a Thunderbird pilot, which is like the Air
Wow.
Force's version of the Blue Angels.
Right.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm in the selection process for that. I've got a beautiful wife. I've got 2 kiddos, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I'm really enjoying my career at this point in time. And out of left field, I get this cancer diagnosis. And not just cancer, but stage 4 cancer, not just stage 4 cancer,
Right.
but a really rare type
So
of cancer.
you're really
form.
already in very, very advanced cancer.
Oh yeah. So the longer story is that I'd spent about a year going to the doctor saying, hey, something's not quite right. I'm not sure what's going on. And they, I was in great shape and I was in great health and I was flying airplanes every day. And I think they very appropriately said, that it'll go away. Just, wait it out. And I'd see a different doctor each time. And so there really wasn't a lot of consistency. And then, 10 months into that journey, they finally did a scan and saw what they
Wow.
want to see.
Wow. Joel, we're going to take a break, get in a word from our sponsors. Folks, I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash. You're listening to Health Matters. My guest is superstar fighter pilot and fighter pilot instructor Joel Neeb. We'll be right back.
Hi, Val Schwan, Director of Counseling at Cumberland Academy. We just finished a group teacher training with Jennifer Kramer from Imagine If. All of the exercises that Jennifer led were very impactful for our teachers to understand perspectives of our students and what might lead to a better increased understanding and a higher social emotional EQ. It was by far one of the most positive experiences I've ever had here at Cumberland with our staff. Again, we enjoyed it. It was fabulous, and our teachers can't wait to see her again.
Do you want to learn how you can stop sabotaging yourself? I'm here with Dr. Vern Morgan, and I think he's about to tell you just that.
There's great new technology which will allow you to change the old negative programming into very positive strategies. And we do that by using and delivering repetitively these strategies, bypassing the conscious mind and influencing the subconscious mind.
And to learn more, go to unitedintentions.org and click on Shop and make the authentic change today.
It's time to wake up, Atlanta. Wake up your inner self to the power of your intentions. Wake up to co-create the life you desire. Wake up to a conscious way of looking at the world with the uncensored Shannon McVeigh and the conscious voice of the South, Tim Ray. Tune into Awaken Atlanta on the UI Media Network, sponsored by the United Intentions Foundation, and discover a whole new way of looking at the world as we bring to you everything from wellness to entertainment, motivation to current events, games, contests, prizes, and much more. Listen to us on Spreaker and watch us live on Facebook at United Intentions every Tuesday and Thursday from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern. You can follow us on Instagram at United Intentions and on Twitter at Higher Intentions. We hope to see you there.
Hi, folks. I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash. You're listening to Health Matters. My guest is Joel Neeb, one of the very best of the elite fighter pilots and fighter pilot instructors from the United States Air Force. Thank you again, Joel, for being here. I appreciate it. Let's explore your journey. I can't imagine. How old were you when you got the...
So 33 years old when I got the cancer
Cancer
diagnosis.
treatment, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. What happened? Tell us what happened after that. Tell us your experience of what it was like to go from, yeah, I mean, you had to feel immortal, if you will, being able to be a fighter pilot, doing the things that you did, living through the exhilaration, maybe the missions that you had, and then all of a sudden, for me, when I was diagnosed with cancer, it was devastating. How did it impact you?
So absolutely caught me off guard. I never would have guessed that I had cancer at that time. Everything was going phenomenally well. I was in the gym every single day. I mean, I was at the peak of good health and from the outside. But the doctors discovered that I had a racquetball-sized tumor. It had spread to other organs in my abdomen, and it was appendix cancer. I'll tell you, it had gone to my intestines, it had gone to my bladder, it had gone to other lymph nodes, and so it had spread. Hence the stage 4 part of the diagnosis. And at the exact same time, almost unbelievably, I literally walked out of the doctor's office where I had the scan done with this bad news. And at the exact same time, my wife walks out of the other side of the hallway with our 3-year-old son to tell me that this mass that we've been monitoring inside of his lung had grown. And this is the terrible news we're hoping not to get. We were on other sides of the hallway.
Oh,
we
my
both
goodness.
came out with devastating news. The nightmare began. And and we're off to the races.
Wow. So you and your son were being treated for cancer at the same time.
I'll have to caveat that. So my son didn't actually have cancer. He had most of his lung removed. It was a precancerous mass, and they said,
got it.
100% it would become cancer. We caught it super early. Thank God. You know, we were very lucky to catch this. But his at that time, he didn't have to get treated for cancer like I did afterwards.
Yeah, it's still devastating though. One following the other. That had to be unbelievable to deal with.
It was a living nightmare.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Joel, I want to ask you a very, very personal question. When I had cancer, and having spoken to many people who have had cancer, we have a particular conversation, and you probably know the direction I'm heading with this, which is, for a lot of us, the nighttime can be a very, very terrifying, scary place. It's quiet, it's dark, and you're left with your thoughts. And usually it always goes back to one thought, and that is, am I going to live or am I going to die? How did you get through that? And did your experience as a fighter pilot help you?
So for me, that thought was prevalent all day long, and I was like beaten down. For 30 days, I was basically curled up in the fetal position and just feeling utterly sorry for myself. And I could not be outside of like 10 feet of my wife, because I just needed to have that security.
Absolutely, I get it.
And every time I would get another scan or to get more updates from the doctors, it would be more bad news. Because at first they didn't know it was stage 4, and at first they didn't know that it was definitely cancer. And you know how that goes. As you continue to progress down the bad news path, you just wonder when the next hit's going to come.
Take.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it.
And so 30 days into it, I am just a wreck. I'm not sleeping. I can't wait for the night because I'm so tired. But then when it's nighttime, I'm tortured by all of these thoughts of my mortality and reflecting back on my life. And I can't wait till the daylight again so I can interact with another person. And it's just a never-ending cycle.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, the worst part of my day is a little different from most cancer patients. I've talked to a lot of cancer patients, and they'll say, I really looked forward to that moment of transition between waking up and being fully awake. And they said, that's the time period where I don't have cancer anymore, and I'm waking up from my dreams, and everything's normal, and I'm just waking up to a normal day, getting ready for work, and then they'll come to the realization, of course, they have cancer. But there's a period of time where they don't. Yeah. And psychologically, it's just such a nice place for them to be. That was my worst place, because
interesting. How come?
Every morning I would wake up and I'd have that same feeling. I don't have cancer. This was a crazy nightmare. My son's not having most of his lung removed. And slowly the news went on, but yeah, I did go to the doctor yesterday, and they did tell me that my son has to have most of his lung removed, and I have stage 4 cancer. And I mean, the nightmare, I would relive it over and over again every single morning. I would just dread that.
Yeah, isn't that a strange phenomenon?
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is eventually it creeps in deeply enough into your soul, so to speak, that you get that it's there.
Absolutely. And then it doesn't go away, and now you're just dealing with it, and I felt like a cornered cat. I don't know if you had the same experience. Almost.
Oh yes.
For
you feel
months.
like where can I go? What can I do? There's a real vulnerability, helplessness that is. I was a fighter, and a different kind of fighter. You were a fighter pilot. I was a fighter, and so I'd never been beaten, and I thought, wow, I don't know if I can beat this. What did you do to help you eventually, after the shock wore off? What did you do to help escape that or to deal with that?
I think it's a common theme because I went back to what I had to go back to when I was a fighter pilot, and I was learning to be a fighter pilot.
Right.
When I had to rely on the system and the team that was around me to succeed. And I couldn't do it by myself. There's no way
Yeah.
I could have ever done any of these things. I couldn't become a fighter pilot by myself. You couldn't just give me the books and give me some training and do that by myself. I couldn't get through cancer by myself.
Right.
I needed my team, my family around me, my team of doctors. I needed my support. And I think it's a really important thing for us as men to admit as well, that we have to rely on a team, especially in these tougher
Yes.
circumstances.
Definitely.
And so I did. I relied on that heavily. And I relied on my doctors, and I trusted in them. And it took a while to build into that.
Sure.
But once I did, it got a lot easier. And then I'm a Christian and spiritual, and so for me, it was really important to fall back on God and that trust that I developed. And I remember at some point, I just basically said, God's either going to lead me from this into good health or through this into eternity, and
Right.
it's in His hands
Beautiful.
either way.
I love that. So what were some of you said you had a lot of people help you. What were some of the major things that people contributed to you that really helped stabilize you and create the security you needed to get through the next day?
So it's on multiple fronts. So my work, basically, the Air Force is just amazing. It's a family.
Right.
And they said, go home, don't come back. We don't want to see you. Go be with your family. Go spend time, whatever you can do to get better. You work on you. And I was doing chemo treatments and recovering with people who didn't come from a military background.
Right.
And very different experience. And they were, their job was in jeopardy.
Right.
They were saying, like, these projects need to get done, and you figure it out how you're going to, do your treatments and do everything you need to do and keep our corporate mission on track. And I didn't have to deal with that. And so from a support perspective, that was phenomenal. I had meals brought to my door left and right, and it was amazing. And then from a spiritual perspective, a turning point for me, we went and talked to my pastor and it told him the situation with myself and my son, and he teared up. But I'll never forget what he said. He said, well, first of all, he asked me, what's the prognosis? And I said, not good. I'm probably going to die from this. And I was really hoping for him to lay hands and say, you're healed. And, and I know that doesn't happen, but
Right.
that's where my mind was going.
Sure. You want anything that works.
Yeah,
I get
exactly.
I get it.
And he said, and I'll never forget, he said, sometimes we're called to show the world how a Christian dies. And in the moment, it really stung, but afterwards, that's something that I fell back on and meant a lot to me, and that was part of my calling for whatever was left of my life.
It's interesting because I think if you do your due diligence, and I'm going to call it due diligence because I think it's imperative that when we get to that place that we really look deeply. And I know a lot of the people I've spoken to that had cancer do not. They panic, they can't focus, they can't center themselves, they don't have the support structure, for example, that you talked about. And they end in a very tragic, abysmal place. I did the same thing you did. I focused. I really brought things, particularly God, into perspective. And I accepted that point that, you know what, I don't want to die. I don't want my kids to grow up and not have me attend their graduation ceremonies, their weddings. I want to see their children. I don't want to leave my wife to have to rear them by herself and so forth. And I don't want to leave my patients. So I focused very heavily on God. And I came to the same conclusion you did, that it's either my time or it's not. And I will do this the very best that I can. And if I die, I'm going to die with grace and ease. So fantastic. I want to go in a different direction. I love that you do a lot of work like this. You're here on your own accord. I want to talk about a lot of the charity work that you do. You do some spectacular charity work. Tell us about it.
Well, so during this time frame, I'm taking stock of my life back in 2010, and I'm looking back at my legacy. There were things I was really excited about and took joy in as I look back at the 33 years I had been given. And then I had some regrets too, and my regrets mostly came from those things that I didn't do and those things that I didn't try, not failures. I didn't regret the failures.
Sure.
I regretted those times when I was up at the plate and I didn't swing for whatever reason. And as I look back at that time frame, I wanted to have a legacy. I wanted to have something that mattered. I wanted to connect my life to something of meaning. And up until that point, I'd gone after every trophy. I'd gone after, I graduated from the Air Force Academy, and I prided myself on what I'd done there for a certificate.
Joel, I hate to interrupt you. This is very powerful and passionate. We've got to take a quick break and get a word in from our sponsors. Folks, I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash. You're listening to Health Matters. My guest is Joel Neeb. We'll be right back, and we'll pick up where we left off. Thank you, Joel.
Hi, I'm Tim Ray, founder of the United Intentions Foundation, where we offer resources and programs to help others awaken to the power of their intentions. One of the ways we get this great message out is through our UI Media Network, which is a platform for people to share their stories and wisdom on air on how they live a life with intent.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Kramer, and Tim and I united to create systematic change on a global scale. We realized that there were gaps in our educational system. Kids were going home every day being bullied, teen suicide was on the rise, and our Imagine If education program helps students understand that they have the ability to create the world around them through their positive thoughts and inspired action.
As we become adults, we often forget how our imagination creates the world around us every day, and how our intentions and our actions from that imagination determines what we experience.
Our goal as a foundation is to use the money raised to offer it free to kids, parents, adults, other communities, other nonprofit organizations, and teach them that they have the ability to create the world around them.
We are so grateful to this incredible cast of paradigm shifters who are authentically changing this world on a global scale.
Download the UI Media Smart app at uimediaapp.com to watch and listen to all your favorite shows anytime from anywhere in the world. Shows that enrich, entertain, educate, and feeds the conscious cells throughout your body. We bring you never heard before topics in health, inspiration, music, psychics, numerology, current affairs, controversies, and much, much more. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.uimediaapp.com and start raising your frequency now.
We're back, folks. I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash. You're listening to another edition of Health Matters. My guest is Joel Neebe. He was a super pilot. He was the most elite of the elite of fighter pilots and fighter pilot instructors until he was struck down with cancer. We're talking about his life and story. Joel, I'm so sorry I interrupted you. Please pick up where you left off. We were talking about your contribution through the charitable work that you do.
And so at this time, 2010, I am taking stock of my life, and I'm looking at the legacy that I want to have. And I'm also trying to cope with all these demons and fears and everything going on. And one of the ways that was really powerful for me to deal with this was to give back to the community. And we started a youth outreach program at that time, and since then it's reached over 15,000 kids.
Wow.
in the community.
Excellent job.
In Texas. And it was amazing. And honestly, though, I think probably this phrase gets used a lot, but it was selfish. It was my way of connecting and helping other people, and it's amazing how you can't feel sorry for yourself when you're helping somebody else up.
I am so happy that you brought that up, because most of the people that I speak to have lived through something as extraordinary as what you have lived through. Say that is the single most important thing, meaning they get inspired with their creator and they decide, okay, I might die, but I'm going to contribute the rest of my life to helping humanity in some way.
I love it.
I really appreciate you saying that.
Yep.
So, your final thoughts.
So
what would you tell somebody, excuse me, Joel, what would you tell somebody who's dealing with what you went through?
My key takeaway, I always say that I wouldn't go through my cancer diagnosis and that nightmare again for $1 million. But I continue that and say, I wouldn't give up the lessons I learned from that experience for $100 million. And for me, there's really 3 key takeaways. And after that experience, I learned what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I sat in a lot of chemo rooms, and everybody would talk about what they were going to do when they got better.
Right.
And it was so optimistic, and we tried to keep a positive spin on things. And some of those people didn't get to come back the next week.
Sure.
And they were going down the wrong path. I fortunately did. And we talked about what we would accomplish when we got better. And I carry an obligation internally to fulfill those things that I said I was going to do in that room. And I think I have an obligation to them. I have an obligation to myself to make that happen. And then for me, that falls into 3 categories. The rest of my life, I want to pursue three different things. 1, growth. I want to get outside of my comfort zone. I want to do the things that scare me every single day and force myself to be uncomfortable. I got really comfortable in airplanes. I got really comfortable with Netflix marathons. And
the Netflix marathon? I get.
Yeah.
Getting comfortable in a fighter plane? Okay.
and so every day I try to find something that scares me a little bit. And then the next one is giving, and that connects back to how powerful it was for me to give something back to somebody else, and how it really is selfish. It's something that you're giving yourself at the exact same time. You get a lot more from doing that, and until you've done it, you truly don't appreciate it. And the last one is gratitude. And just after everything's taken away, it's very clear to see how much you had.
Beautiful.
And for me, it comes down to those 3 categories.
Fantastic. I want to ask you one more question, and that is, you now do some extraordinary things from a physical perspective. Tell me a little bit about that. And do you use these to reclaim your power?
Absolutely. So I've been blessed to be in good health since then. And one of the key things I wanted to do as part of getting outside my comfort zone. So on the 5-year anniversary of my cancer diagnosis, on a day that my doctor said I had 85% certainty to be dead, instead, I went out and completed an Ironman triathlon in New Zealand.
Wow.
And it was
fantastic.
I'd never done a marathon before.
Right.
My last bike said Huffy on it, and I wasn't a swimmer, so way outside my comfort zone. And then a couple of years ago, I did a physique competition, way outside my comfort zone. I've done American Ninja Warrior, the high flying obstacle course. And I did that last year. I'm getting ready to do that again in 4 weeks. Once again, way outside my comfort zone. The kids I'm competing with are all gymnasts, and I'm 42. And
right.
I have no business being there, but it's an absolute blast, and that's part of the journey.
Fantastic. One last thing. How can people learn more about your story?
So I've actually written a book, and it's going to be published this summer, called Survivor's Obligation. I've written it with another Thunderbird pilot who ejected from his aircraft, and we tell our stories from different perspectives. And then the other place that I'd have folks go to is madetoadvance.com/Thor. And you're going to get to read about all this and more at that website.
Excellent. Joel, thank you for joining us. Folks, thank you very much for joining us on Health Matters. Remember, live your best each and every day. I'll look forward to seeing you again soon.